I think it might only be done in front of you all.
No, I was on mine too. Good night, everybody.
What a good meeting.
Yeah, it was really good. Did you have a good long process? Long process.
When it comes to us. We're not sure. We don't know. We'll let her know later.
Front of you all, you got the lady thing, they did everything else. They didn't go quite forward. We're ready. Huh?
We're gonna get that. I just got it.
I mean, you know, that's.
He's got it. That's why I was
It's 3:30 and I would like to call the Public Works Board into session. Do we have the roll?
Mr. Collins?
Here.
Mr. Frost?
Here.
Mr. Darazinski?
Here.
Mr. Engel?
Here.
Mr. Fisher?
here.
Mr. Jaeger?
Here.
Mr. Plummer?
Here.
Mr. Snyder?
Here.
Ms. Wilkins?
Here.
Ms. Gormester?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
The next order of business is the approval of the agenda. So it's been moved and seconded. Are there any additions or corrections? If not, we will move ahead and get my plaque. Maybe. No?
Gently.
Yeah. It's a winter copy. Or lose. How's that?
You had the same problem everybody else did. You cleaned most of them up.
The first order of business is approval of the minutes of the last meeting.
So moved.
It's been moved and seconded. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes? If not, all those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Those opposed say no. The minutes are approved. Next section is accounts payable.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to pay the current accounts payable. Any questions or comments? If not, let's have a roll call on that since it's dollars.
Mr. Fisher?
Yes.
Mr. Jaeger?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. Darazinski?
Yes.
Mr. Engel?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Plummer?
Yes.
Ms. Wilkins? Yes. Mr. Frost?
Yes.
Motion carried.
The next order of business is, are there any public comments on an agenda item? If so, please come to the podium and state your name and your comment. If not, we'll move along to items for consideration.
Sure. Number one is landlord consent for AT&T Mobile.
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and seconded to give our consent to the new agreement for the AT&T Mobile. Is there questions or comments? Both Report and North Shores have agreed to this previously. So, if not, roll call please.
Mr. Jaeger?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. Darazinski?
Yes.
Mr. Engel?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Plummer?
Yes.
Ms. Wilkins? Yes. Mr. Frost?
Yes.
Mr. Fisher?
Yes.
Motion carried. Number two is award proposal for engineering for expansion to landfill gas collection system.
So moved.
It's been moved and seconded to award the proposal for expansion of the gas in the engineering for the expansion for the landfill. Are there questions or comments, Alan?
Yeah, we didn't get a price on what each one bid to do this. So is this the cheapest one, or is this
John Warner, Public Works Department. That's correct, you didn't see the prices of this. Typically, price should not enter into selection of a consultant because that's not what you're looking for, is the cheapest one. As it turns out, this happened to be the cheapest one, but it had absolutely nothing to do with our selection of them. Actually, we were leaning more towards the most expensive one for the longest period of time.
I had a couple more questions. Is all the grass promised out for that whole long selling, even what we haven't sold up yet?
Yes.
So, but at night, we're still burning gas off all the time. I mean, I don't know that they're always using it. Are they gonna be able to use all of it now that we got the line picked back out, or is
They
it?
should be. I don't believe we're burning anything. Greg said the flare isn't been running. So we're selling everything we make.
Okay. And the gas is promised, so we're into a lease with them like for a certain
Yes.
amount of time, or?
Yeah, I want to say it's a 20-year lease that goes in 5-year increments, you know, with a renegotiation every 5 years if necessary.
And future expansion after that is still up in the air, if that's.
Yeah, basically, yes, we're promised through cells 1 through 5, which is what we have constructed right now. Beyond that, there is no contracts or anything.
Any further questions, comments? If not,
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. Darazinski?
Yes.
Mr. Engel?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Plummer?
Yes.
Ms. Wilkins? Mr. Cross?
Yes.
Mr. Fisher?
Yes.
Mr. Jaeger?
Yes.
Motion carried. Number 3 is agreement with Fern Group.
So moved.
Second.
it's been moved and seconded to agree with the Fern Group, allowing them to do a one-time run out at the wastewater. Is there any questions or comments? Okay, go ahead.
I didn't get a chance to ask this earlier, but I think, Mark, have you gone to Moreland Township and gotten approval from their board or as far as their zoning, or it's okay with them on this issue?
Hello, Mark Eisenberg, Director of the Wastewater Department. To answer your question, Eric Anderson, the gentleman who proposed this, he's in the audience. If you guys have any questions for him as well. But he did go visit with him, and he's okay. It's a one-time event. If it becomes more regular events, he would have them come back and talk to them and get permission as needed. So to answer your question, Moreland Township is here. Said he was okay with this event.
Do I understand that then it's just an informal aspect of this first run?
Yes. It is informal for this first one, yes.
The insurance issues and all that would be between them and the county?
Right now, we have our own insurance set up with them. Our normal is $500,000. On this one here, we asked for $1 million, and they were willing to do that. So we do have a $1 million coverage on here, or if there's any accidents, or if there's any problems whatsoever, they're well covered for us.
Can they hold Moreland harmless also?
I think once they sign that agreement with Moreland, that would be addressed then.
Yes.
Thank you.
Alan?
I think this is a good thing, and I'd like to hear, maybe he'd like to speak about it a little bit.
I'll move to suspend the rules.
Sorry. Been moved and seconded to suspend the rules to allow him to talk. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no.
I'm a little, if I may, Mr. Chair, I'm a little responsible for this. He sits on a power tour with me on that, and we started talking about this, and anything you can bring to Muskegon that's new and different, and people from the outside, I'm always anxious to do that. And maybe we've got something here.
Great, thank you. I'm here with my son, Jay over here. We're, as Mr. Darazinski stated, these events are held in other parts of the state. My son and I have been involved in these type of events, and we'd like to bring this to West Michigan. The Fern Group has been in existence for 50 years. We are a not-for-profit corporation. So anything we do goes back into the club or to support charity. And we do that each year. Last year we donated $3,000 to March of Dimes. We're also supporting the March of Dimes and Pioneer Resources as a power tour this year. So we're doing an event in conjunction with them. May I speak to the question about Moreland just a little bit, a moment? I spoke with Charles Krebs there, he indicated to me that historically, Moreland Township has not, or has allowed the wastewater system to hold one-time events. I asked him a little bit more to define a one-time event. He defined that to me as an event that may last 1 day or 2 days or 3 days, but has no permanent use of the facilities. In other words, people coming and going, working on the facility, or no permanent buildings or anything of that nature. So my understanding of him as a one-time event is not necessarily just once, but it's a designated use on a designated date. I did indicate to him that should this be approved and we're allowed to do a trial event, that as a courtesy, at the very least, I would talk to him again and keep him apprised of the situation. In the event he would like us to come back and address that under the zoning ordinances.
Let me interrupt 1 second. Sure. Give us your name for the record.
I'm sorry, Eric Anderson, representing the Furring Group, and I'm here with my son Jay Anderson.
Alan?
If this works out good for both parties, then you look at coming back for more times, or
Ideally, we would like to make this an event that it will depend on response that we get from participants, but ideally, I would like to be able to do 2 or 3 a year. Of course, at the pleasure of the board and the wastewater system. This is a grassroots level of motorsports competition, stressing car control. It is 1 car in the venue at a time. It's not a door-to-door racing thing. It's non-intrusive in that it's not like a dirt track where you have 40 cars all of a sudden at full throttle and a big noise. We have visited a potential site out there. It's a half-mile away from the nearest home. I'm confident in stating that we will not be disruptive to them at all. We're very safety-oriented. The site would lend itself to us being able to control access because there's basically 1 entrance to this. It's a 10-acre field. We ask anybody on site that they're aware of what's going on. They'll sign a waiver to us, but nonetheless, we still are obviously insured.
if dust is a real problem, do you have a way to handle that, or we usually that doesn't have a problem?
I don't believe it will, sir. If it's dry conditions, it will create some dust, but because there's really 1 car running through a part of the course at a time, I believe that'll be minimal.
If I may, Cruising the Lakeshore Committee, which has started Power Tour. And our goal from the onset was to have a annual weekend for cars. Now, we've been blessed to have Hot Rod Power Tour come the first 2 years. Next year, I'm fairly confident we're not going to see it. But what we want to see is events like these, antiques, and other things filling the city that first week of June. And this gives us one of those venues, so I'm very supportive of it.
I also am very supportive of it. I think it's a great idea. I would like to find out how many people you anticipate, and whether you anticipate that any of them will stay overnight, eat in the restaurants, and actually be a part of the economic development of the downtown or the entire county.
Initially, anyway, and usually these are 1-day events, but we're hoping to attract people from the Mid and Detroit area, so those people will come to town and they're going to buy gas and eat here and so forth. So there's going to be some effect of that, from that, of course. Typically, we wouldn't see more than 50 vehicles that are competing. We would probably limit it to that for control. It's not a huge spectator venue, so I would estimate 100 people here. Primarily from outside this area though. They're going to see this area.
Further questions, comments?
It's 100 more than we had before.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think it's a great use, I think it's a great use for the property. I think, along with hunting and everything else that's out there, I think it's a marvelous use of the property.
Well, let me warn you. It's being looked at very carefully by the Street Rod Association for next year's cruise in the lake shore. You'll be hearing more as those get defined. So, Mark, we have talked, but it's all informal, but we need to use it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I guess,
Go back and
go back to
So moved.
session. All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Opposed, no. We're back in session. Are there any further questions or comments on this? Let's do a roll call just so everybody can try and jump on board.
Mr. Derzinski?
Yes.
Mr. Engel?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Plummer?
Yes.
Ms. Wilkins? Yes. Mr. Cross?
Yes.
Mr. Fisher?
Yes.
Mr. Jaeger?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes,
Motion carried. Item number 4 is award bids, uniforms, and floor mats.
so moved.
It's been moved and seconded to award bid for the uniforms and formats. Are there any questions or comments? If not, roll call, please.
Mr. Engel?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Plummer?
Yes.
Ms. Wilkins? Yes. Mr. Cross?
Yes.
Mr. Fisher?
Yes.
Mr. Jaeger?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. Derzinski?
Yes.
Motion carried. Number 5 is City of Muskegon metering dispute.
So moved, second.
It's been moved and seconded to move forward on this. Mark, did you want to say anything, or simply turn over to Ted?
Any questions, I'll direct it to him.
Yeah, it's back to the Ted. No, all the townships other than Muskegon, the city of Muskegon, and all the cities are okay with it.
Well, I attended a users meeting Tuesday, and all of the users were not represented, but of those that were, it passed unanimously.
And your recommendation would be best if we do this also.
Yes.
Dave, I think that's all over here.
Dave?
Ted, I was at that meeting and it passed unanimously, but was not in a different form than this one? Was there not some discussion on whether or not the signatures should be on, that we get signatures before we go in?
That is,
Amend the motion?
that is true. A precise motion pass indicated that as a condition of arbitration, that the city would execute the master agreement. And certainly that's appropriate. I would urge amendment to this motion as well.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to add the amendment that prior to going into arbitration, the city of Muskegon would sign the master contract. Is that, I don't know who made the motion, is that a friendly amendment or should we?
Friendly.
Is that a friendly amendment with you, Al? Did you say that?
I'll second it.
You second it. Is that friendly with you? Okay. The motion then has a friendly amendment. John?
Well, I'm not sure it's friendly all of a sudden, because what you've done is essentially go from mediation and arbitration into binding arbitration. And there's a
That's
difference.
the purpose of this.
Yeah, there's a difference.
I believe it is binding in arbitration, Ted.
That's what it
Motion.
does.
I believe the county has made the the suggestion that we go into binding arbitration to find out what that number might be.
Okay. That's
motion.
different than having the city agree to this and sign up in advance.
Arbitration, right?
Correct. And if I indicate that that's, I misspoke. As part of this, and we had an extensive discussion with the users group, we will have to have a arbitration agreement,
Okay.
laying out the rules of the road.
All right. Assuming that the city will do whatever they're gonna do, then that's fine. There is a difference. Okay. I don't have an argument with that.
You feel comfortable with that?
I do.
We know the league.
Yep.
Okay.
They either will or they won't.
Okay, are there further questions, discussions? If not, roll call vote, please.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Plummer?
Yes.
Ms. Wilkins? Yes. Mr. Cross?
Yes.
Mr. Fisher?
Yes.
Mr. Jaeger?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. Derzinski?
Yes.
And Mr. Engel?
Yes.
Motion carried. Number 6 is award contract for engineering consulting professional services.
Or it's been moved and seconded to award the contract for consulting services. Are there questions or comments, Al?
This cost overruns, not a problem for a new hall.
The question was, is there cost overruns for Pine Bluff?
Yeah, that we've had.
The projects that I've been working with on the wastewater side, speaking only of the wastewater side, I have not had one, and I can show documentation of that, but there's no runover. I have not had any runovers. Actually, for the wastewater, I've not had a request for additional engineering funds either, for the wastewater projects that I've been involved with.
So, like,
What's that?
I guess, they don't put cost in here again, and they get most of our work, I believe, didn't they, or not? So there's no cost to what we bid.
But I think you had it. Or didn't you? I thought you.
I guess I'm losing, I don't know where we're going on this. Is this a
Well, I don't
question?
have a price on all the other companies that bid, once again.
This was, I can answer that for you. This was an RFQ, so we went qualifications. What we do is, after qualifications, so they send a packet to the 8 firms who submitted. The 4 people evaluating, one, I was not of the 4. They evaluated, gave it back to me, the top 3 from their scores. We called in for interviews, and in addition, they had to supply their hourly rate for the next 3 years. So at that point, we did not know for sure who we were going with. So each firm has supplied a rate for the next 3 years based on different services that I listed. So I have that. They go ahead and did the interviews, they recommended to me, and then I looked at the price and I locked in the price for that, which was Pine Bluff. I do have a printout if you're interested in looking at that. I did bring it if you're interested. I can sure hand that out as well. Just so happens, you look at that, let me grab it real quick to answer your question. My head on these TVs. So if you look at that, I take the most used hours out of an engineering firm for the wastewater again is utility infrastructure, process engineering, and environmental. Top 3, the bottom 3 I have site design, structural design, overall client manager. I could usually take the top 3, top 4, top 5 on here. I'm going to use the top 6. Brian Newhoff is stays on there, 127 per hour. Firm D, which is the middle column, is 129 per hour. And firm C, the third column, is 136 per hour.
does the company, the people that rate these things, do they know the names of the companies? Or the people that are rating them, do they know the names of the companies when they're rating them?
Oh, yes, they have to.
They have to know the name too. So if we've worked a lot with U-Haul, it kind of gives them a little advantage.
But I see your point, that's why I removed myself from the evaluation. We used 3 people from the users committee, and I used 1 person outside the wastewater together. Actually, he was from the Ottawa County Road Commission. So we had an outside person, and his recommendation came in the same as the others.
Thank you.
Questions or comments?
Mr. Plummer?
Yes.
Ms. Wilkins? Yes. Mr. Cross?
Yes.
Mr. Fisher?
Yes.
Mr. Jaeger?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. Derzinski?
Yes.
Mr. Engel?
Yes.
And Mr. Tellman?
Yes.
Motion carried. Number 7 is design services for Lincoln Township metering project.
So moved.
It's been moved and seconded to award the design services for Lincoln Township. Are there any questions or comments? Mark, would you, this might be a good time
If you
to give us a little
pass-
background.
pass that around.
Sure.
Lincoln Township, real quick, has been working with me on this for a couple of years now. We did a metering study on their system because they're one of the last ones that has their billing calculated by subtraction. The city of Muskegon was one, and Lincoln Township is the last one that has the full flow based off subtraction. Kim and I, Kim's in the audience, we worked together on this. They split the metering study with us. The users paid half, Lincoln Township paid half. We did a 3-month study. There's some problems with that during the process of that study, so the company did an extra 3, so we actually had 6 months worth of data to evaluate. And we compared that to our subtraction method, and there was enough evidence to me without question that it's worth putting a meter in for them to get an accurate billing. The first point. The second point, it gets everybody off of the subtraction method. Beyond that, that was the end of 2000. In summer of 2011, we came with that conclusion. They had to wait for us to add the engineering to the budget for 2011-12. That occurred. Then I went out for engineering services, and I just got that awarded. Now I can move on to this project. And Lincoln Township has been very patient with me getting things in a row here to go through this process. In the meantime, we've also asked Kim to write up this letter that I just handed out, and she's going to come up here and read it to the group. So if you mind, if it's okay to bring Kim up for that.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to suspend the rules. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Kim Arter, Laketon Township Supervisor. If I can, I'd like to read the letter that I wrote that you'll have a copy of. I did write this letter to Mark Eisenbar. Laketon Township is pleased that the engineering is underway for our wastewater metering project. We appreciate Muskegon County Department of Public Works working with us on this project to ensure a more accurate method to measure wastewater flow. We feel it would be cost effective for both parties and will assure that Laketon Township is being accurately and fairly billed for wastewater services. This will also resolve the issues raised by the subtraction method that is currently being used for Laketon Township. We would like to move forward once the meters are installed and we are on the meter billing system. Therefore, Laketon Township will not be asking the Muskegon County Wastewater Management System to look back at previous billings as to whether they were correct or not, and to reimburse the township for any overbillings.
Thank you. Are there any questions?
I'd like to add, thank you very much for this letter, Ms. Arter. I'd like to add one other point that the board may not know is that you have, for the last 8 years, maybe longer, expended a lot more money than just on issues of whether the flow was there or not. They did a lot of their own engineering and testing, and brought in other firms to put meters in to check what was going on to make sure that they were heading in the right direction. That was a considerable expense to Lincoln Township. That's not really much in the menu, so I Thank you.
Any further, first of all, let's go back in session. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same, we're back in session. Now, are there any other questions or comments? If not, roll call vote, please.
Ms. Wilkins?
Yes.
Mr. Cross?
Yes.
Mr. Fisher?
Yes.
Mr. Jaeger?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. Derazinski?
Yes.
Mr. Engel?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Plummer?
Yes.
Motion carried. Number 8 is Phase 2 Redmond area sewer repairs.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to move on to phase 2 for the Rudman repairs. Are there any questions or comments?
Just one question. When you get a chance, which section is this from where to where?
The sections, we've cut these up in 3 sections. Section 1 was, first one was the closest one to Rudman. That's phase 2. Phase 1, phase 2 is more through the woods area, and phase 3 is up there, obviously in the southwest corner. Phase 2 is what we're looking at to do this time around.
Up through the woods?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Further questions or comments? If not, roll call, please.
Mr. Fisher?
Yes.
Mr. Jaeger?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. Derazinski?
Yes.
Mr. Engel?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Plummer?
Yes.
Ms. Wilkins?
Yes.
And Mr. Cross?
Yes.
Motion carried. Number 9 is authorization to bid grain cart.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Are there any questions or comments? Alan?
Yeah, I think I had a discussion with you the other day, and I thought some of the locals aren't getting the bids because of this Minton thing. Did we find out anything on that, make sure the locals are getting a chance to bid on this stuff, or?
Yeah, I did talk to Heath in the past and their staff is to, we make sure we give them, the ones who've been in the past, they follow up with Minton. Minton's making contact, physically contact with them by phone and by letter, is my understanding. Next year, as years come, we continue checking that to make sure they continue, that they are getting that. Some of them, I'm not saying the ones that you know, but some of them, they did it and chose not to. But we're noticing too, some of the bidders are different, so we're going back to making sure they were sent notice and making sure that Minton's following through with that. And he's been very helpful with getting that followed through as well.
I suppose we're signed into something where we can't just send letters to each one, some of these bidders for a while either to make sure they're getting in, or?
I don't know the specifics of it. We'd have to get back to you on that.
Okay.
Yes, I have a comment on that. You could send those out. It becomes a considerable expense if you send out stuff when there's nothing going on.
Right. Well, but the thing is, some of them ain't picking up this Minton thing. Like Slater's didn't bid on all of our alfalfa either, so, or whatever it was we had out there. And I worry about, maybe this is small, but some of the bids could be very large. And I want to make sure that everybody has a chance to participate, because it makes it a lot harder, But I'm just saying, I just want to make sure everybody gets a chance around Keith County to bid on this stuff. These local bidders, that's all. I'm cool, I understand.
Any further questions or comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Number 10 is authorization to bid mower.
So moved. Second.
Been moved and second for authorization to bid the mower, replace mower. Questions or comments? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Number 11 is authorization to bid GPS system.
So moved. Been moved and seconded to bid for upgrade on the GPS system. Question or comment?
Mark, do we ever use any aerial spraying? Or is this used, I know we apply our own, but there are a lot of big farms that do it via airplane.
I think the last time we done that was like 3 or 4 years ago. Our spraying equipment now handles that pretty efficiently, so it's cheaper for us to right now do it ourselves. But yes, we have done that in the past.
And this kind of negates some of that need to do it.
Yeah, what this does is make sure that we're not overlapping our spraying and make sure the seeding is straight, is equivalent to where it's supposed to be, inches apart. Another important thing is the helps us identify the nutrient shortage with the soil analysis. So if you used to do 100 acres, it might tell you that there's low in nitrogen here and low in phosphorus here. So when you're going across it, you can increase the discharge of those nitrogen or phosphorus, whatever it might be. So it's becoming very high-tech equipment inside of it now. It's not driving a tractor anymore. So if anybody wants to come out and drive one, we'll set you in the seat and turn it on and it'll drive itself. So you'll be okay.
Lay somebody off?
No.
Any other questions? If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay.
Number 12 is Gamesa Muskegon Wind LLC indemnification letter.
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the indemnification letter that's been sent to us. Is there questions or comments? If not, roll call, please.
Mr. Engel?
Yes.
Mr. Fallon?
Yes.
Mr. Plummer?
Yes.
Ms. Wilkins? Yes. Mr. Frost?
Yes.
Mr. Fisher?
Yes.
Mr. Jaeger?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
And Mr. Darazinski?
Yes.
Motion carried.
The next item is informational items. There are 3 this month. Is there a motion?
Yes. Do you accept and place on file?
And it's been made to accept and place on file. Are there any questions or comments on this month's report? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. We're now down to old business.
Mr. Anderson and Son, I wonder if you could supply us with a date if this is successful, and if there are 50 participants, would you get them our visitor's guide? Sure. You know, they're coming, and they would get them to stay that day. And I'll make sure you get those. You'll be at the power tour meeting.
I will.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilor, do you have-
Yes, I'm pleased to see that finally, at long last, wind energy may come to the wastewater site. And since it's moving ahead now and perhaps doesn't require the attention of the staff that it did before, I'm going to mention something else that I had mentioned on 2 different occasions, as a little business. And it was brought to my attention again recently because the state of Michigan has put up an auction for leases for gas development. And I would like to see us start really pursuing the opportunity for the shale gas development out at the wastewater site. I've said in the past that Michigan sits on the largest single pocket of shale gas, even larger than out west or larger than in Pennsylvania. And I just think that it's something that we ought to take a look at as a county with that property available. It would reduce the value, it would reduce the cost of all of the participants in the wastewater site. It just has a lot of attributes. So if somehow or other we can get moving on that, and this is not meant as a slam to the current participants, but if we could get moving on it and not have to wait as long as we did for wind, I would genuinely appreciate it.
I think there are some exploratory.
Copeland Resources out of Texas, Austin, Texas, is doing 4 southern counties as we speak. I'm very familiar with that company, but they are doing it as we speak right now.
Well, and I would point out that the DNR has come out and said that if you adhere to the DNR regulations. There is no danger to the water supply, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So if there's any fear of that, it's just not there.
Any other old business? Any new business? Is there any public comment on a new item? Motion made. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Adjourned.